review, but that's your slope and that's your y-intercept, right? So we start at -2 on the y-axis and put our first point. I know the problem here. Make this closer. All right, and then let's see, the slope is positive. So I go up 2 over 3. I like to put a couple points down 2 over 3 just because I don't know where the intersection point might be. So then I at least have some points on my line, and I can do more if I need to. And then just a quick review, how many solutions could I find? I might find what? I could find one intersection point. What else could happen? What? I could find many solutions. How would there be many solutions? If it's the same line when I solve for slope-intercept form, what's my third possible outcome? No solution, right? What type of slope would I have to have down here for them to be parallel? What slope would have to be this in this line? Yeah. Well, that would be perpendicular, but then they would intersect. It would just have to be 2/3 x. So when I solve this, if it's also 2/3 x, it's either going to be the same line or parallel for one of those other solutions. But all I have to do is move the x to the other side by subtracting it. So my other line is y equals -x plus 3. So I go to 3 on the 1, 2, 3 y-axis and down 1 over 1 until I find an intersection point, I guess right there, huh? So you get graded on the test that you can graph the two lines correctly, and I have to still write down the solution. So the whole point was, where do these lines intersect? How do I write my solution? Huh? Yeah, the coordinates are what, 3, 0? So you will be assessed on being able to graph the lines, finding the intersection point, maybe converting them into slope-intercept form correctly, like we just did. So that's kind of one objective on the test. Number 2, you've got the objective of algebraic solving a linear system, and you could choose substitution or elimination. To me, this is already set up for which method in an easier way. I would do elimination. See how they're lined up on top of each other? But you might say, I could get y by itself just by adding x to the other side. So you might like substitution better. What could I multiply the bottom row by? Either +2 to get rid of the x's or +4 to get rid of the y's. So I'm just going to do 2 multiplied by a smaller number, right? So you make the top equation the same. 2x minus 4y equals -24. -2x plus 2y equals 12. So the first step is multiplying through so that one of your variables will eliminate. Add your two equations together. So the x's add up to 0. They're eliminated. My y values add up to -2y and equals -12. So y has to be how much? 6. And then that's half of my answer. So what's my next step? Yeah. Plug it back in. You could do the first equation, the second equation, or the multiple of that equation. I think it's easier. The second equation, if I plug 6 in for y right there, don't I have 6 equals 6 already? So what does x have to be? Just 0. See how you could pick the easier equation and just look and see when I plug in y. So 0, 6 is the answer. If you want to check it in the top equation, 0 minus 24 equals -24. It should make the other equation true. All right, so that's kind of objective number 2, solving algebraically. Kind of objective number 3 is if you have an application problem. Some of you were struggling with this. You might want this objective, as more practice next class with application problems. So let's set this one up together. Molly took a test. The test had 186 points over 48 questions. There were multiple choice questions worth 2 points each and free response questions worth 5 points each. How many of each question type were there? So I want to know how many of each question type were there. So let's let X be multiple choice and Y be free response, right? Just so I know what I'm talking about. So who can write me an equation here that I've got 48 questions total? Who can write me an equation that says I have 48 questions? Yes, Aiden. Right. So that's like the number of items, the number of pizza and soda, the number of dollar bills, the number of people in attendance. So then your second equation is usually some type of money or value equation. So go ahead, Aiden.
So you make y the free response one, so it'd be 2x plus 5y equals 186.
Yep, 2 points times the multiple choice questions and 5 points times the free response equals 186 points. Why don't you take a minute on your own and try solving that either by substitution or elimination? To me, I like elimination. If you hate it, do substitution. However you can get to an answer. I'm going to put it up. I'm just for the sake of my video. I chose to multiply the top equation by -2. So negative 2x minus 2y is negative 96. That gives me that 3y equals positive 90. So I have 30 free response questions. And if I have 48 questions, then 18 of them would have to be multiple choice. And then you could always just double check that 2 times 18 plus 5 times 30 should add up to 186. And so you could double check that you have the right answer. All right, could someone, or why don't you try this before we say the answer? Try writing a system of equations that would have no solution. We talked about it briefly up in number 1. So write me any system of equations you want that would have no solution when you graph it or solve it algebraically. Could have been a parallel set of lines like y equals 4x plus 5 and y equals 4x minus 10. Something like that. The slope is the same, but the y-intercept needs to be different or else it's the same line on top of itself. So you should have the same slope, but a different y-intercept. And they would be parallel, so they would never intersect each other. The one other type of problem that we didn't review on here, I don't know if I put it on here. Yes, inequalities. So just before we go for a walk, could you turn to the next part of the review? I'm going to have you do some of that on your own. But can you turn to number 21? Because I think it's worth reviewing 21 together because it was during our kind of virtual and remote time. A system of inequalities. Everyone find that? It's number 21 of like the very next set of problems. Tell me if you can't find it. It should be just the very next page, right? So see, it says systems review. If you just go to page, the back of page 2 of that, number 21. Okay, so what you do is you treat them like lines. Y equals 3x minus 1 because you already know how to graph that line. You look at the inequality symbol. This says greater than or equal to. So that tells you that you're going to graph it with a solid line over here. Oh, it looks like I didn't put an axis, huh? Well, just draw yourself an axis somewhere. If you got a ruler, I guess you should use the ruler. If not, there you go. So just make an axis for yourself. And you're going to graph the line y equals 3x minus 1 using a solid line. So I'm going to start at -1 on the y-axis and go up 1, 2, 3 over 1. 1, 2, 3 over 1. Over 1. So that the whole first step is just graphing a line like you've done the rest of the unit. You just need to figure out where you're going to shade. Are my solutions above this line or are they below this line? And I use the inequality to tell me that. This says y is bigger than the line. So where are the y values going to be bigger? Up here or down here? Above, right? The y values are bigger above something. So that kind of gets a lightly shaded in region. You're gonna have to graph something else, so don't shade it too dark, but this is, so far my solution is over here. I think you have a different color just for the second part so you can see it. All right, so now part 2, I need to get y equals again. So I'm going to divide this inequality by 2 before I start. Y is less than 5x plus 3. Some of you juniors taking the SAT, they like you to know this rule for inequalities. If you had negative, let's say 3y is less than or equal to 6x plus 9, here's an FYI, if you divide an inequality by a negative number, you have to flip the sign around. So the negative number flips the sign around if you're dividing or multiplying. So this would actually be y is greater than or equal to negative 2x minus 3. I'm probably not going to put that negative division rule on your test. I'm probably going to give you them both in slope-intercept form ready to graph. I just want to know that you could graph an inequality. Not that you understand all the algebra behind inequalities, but SAT, that's kind of a good rule to know. Here I was dividing by a positive number. So this is my inequality. I'm going to use a dotted line because it says y is strictly less than this function. So I don't want to include the line in my solution. So I'm going to start at 3, 1, 2, 3, and I have a slope of up 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over 1. Oh, I made this not have very much of an intersection, did I? Ooh. Not a very good one. Bad example. Where did I want to shade this one? Below it. Oh man, there's not much of an intersection, is there? That was a bad call. All right, so this is going to be below the purple line. So there is a tiny region that's almost too small to see, but isn't it right in here? I have a little bit of purple and a little bit of black right in that top region where those two, kind of the skinny triangle is formed. Sorry, I made this up without actually seeing if it made sense, but that's where the solution is. So it's slightly above this black line and slightly below the purple line. That's where you've got purple and black shading right there. So if you didn't do, well, I think everyone did the thing about inequalities. So if you need more help on inequalities, I can definitely get you some more practice on that. All right, so now